I would say that unquestionably, I am an American, born there. My father slaved there. Upon the backs of my people was developed the primary wealth of America. The primary wealth. You have to have accumulated wealth to start, to build. You did it another way here in Australia. You had to build your accumulated wealth. You just came and took it. You know what I mean? And that's what they did in most of the countries. That's what you Europeans did. You just took it. We got to catch up with you a little bit.
I received a letter from a young black mathematician in Philadelphia, Ted Irwin. Ted Irwin presented to me the Xerox of something he'd taken from a book called Mathematical Recreations. In 1932, a Dutch scientist, a Dutch mathematician, Dr. Keerder, discovered something astonishing. They found on the sarcophagus of an Egyptian in the step pyramid at Saqqara, built by the black genius Imhotep, they discovered a stone. People had looked at this stone many times, but they had not noticed that it was how significant it was, because on this stone were snakes, formed in the form of snakes, and there was a harp player, etc. And they did not take this as very important. They did not understand what it was. After he began to look at it, and you will get a chance to see it tonight, it's our last slide. What did you think he discovered? He discovered that all the decimal numbers we're using today, which some of us call Arabic numerals, and some of us, even myself, thought to be Hindu numerals and Arabs had brought into Europe during the Moorish civilization, had actually been created 2,900 years before Christ by the Egyptians. The decimal numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all those had been created by the blacks in Egypt 2,900 BC. But we never suspected this because the general Egyptians were using other ciphers. This was held by a secret society of Egyptians. Imhotep and a few people knew about it. And there is no question about the date. And do you know, although that was discovered about 60 years ago, nearly 60 years ago, announced in 1932, nobody said a word about it. It's right there in this book. It's sitting on page 311. There is absolutely no question about it. It's more than 1,000 years before the Hindu picked it up. And Thutmose III had carried this over into Asia when Thutmose conquered 110 cities in Asia. And there was never a word about it. That is one of the astonishing things that we are discovering now. That when Sheikh Anthony Diop was taking skins off the mummies in the Museum of Man, Diop told me when I was in England in '85, Diop said, do you know that when I was taking off the skin to study it in my lab, I discovered other people had already taken off skin? Yet nobody had said a word. In other words, some people had actually found out what he was to find out later, but they never said a word about it. It is very important. That is the reason why we have to be very educated about these things. Because after a period of time, if you're not vigilant, things that we have discovered now, 50 years from now, we may be told, that's not true. Where did you get that from? I never heard of that. It is very important. It is very important. Now I have to get close to the mic, I understand. It is very important that this knowledge, which is not just being hooted about in words, this knowledge is now captured in journals, it's captured in books. Every year, since 1979, after I finished They Came Before Columbus, I have edited 1 or 2 books a year. I am now on my 14th book, which comes out on June 30th. There's Africans in early Europe, Africans in early Asia, which is being revised and expanded to include Japan and other parts of the world. There's Africans in early America, which comes out in June. There is there is Egypt Revisited. There's Nile Valley Civilizations. There is Great African Thinkers. There are books on African presence in the art of the Americas. There's a whole range of books. Black women in antiquity, etc. You are not to go without these things. It is not enough to make hollow boasts or outlandish statements about what blacks did in history. It is important that you should know the facts. If some of you learned the Bible by heart, most of our mothers or grandmothers or grandfathers learned the Bible by heart. Why shouldn't we learn our history by heart? There are certain people among us, and I needn't name them. You ask them about anything in their history, they will recite you page, chapter, and verse. We have to learn to do that, because that is a protection, a tremendous protection against the loss of our past. The loss of that past, the inability to present and project it in such a way as to give us a certain strength during the years of our fragmentation and disunity and loss. Those are the things that kept us away from this kind of internal strength that we are now beginning to recover and revive. The Egyptians gave us the calendar. The first people to invent the 365 and a quarter day year were the Egyptians. It went up into Europe. They were the first people to cut the year into 365 and a quarter days. They dealt with the quarter differently. After 1,460 years, they created a leap year. Around 300 BC, when the Greeks came in, they changed that. You have also the Africans creating the exact calculation of the year into 12 months of 30 days each. They had 5 festival days. December the 25th, which we now celebrate as the Day of the Christ, Africans created that day. They were the first people to celebrate December the 25th as the Day of the Christ. Jesus was not born. Jesus is the last and perhaps the most powerful of the Christ figures. But the Christ figure was already in Africa. Christ is an African word. It's K-R-S-T, Christ, Christ of Christ. That's an Egyptian word meaning the anointed one, the revered one. And that exists in Africa. The figure that was being worshipped as the Christ was Horus. Horus, the mother of Horus was Isis. We have found, Bruce Williams, Keith Seal discovered that in Nubia, on the edge of the Sudan, a place called Kustal, they discovered a pharaonic civilization where Horus the Christ is already in existence. This is 200 years before the first Egyptian dynasty. We have discovered these figures in tALLAHassee, a civilization known as tALLAHassee, which precedes the Egyptian by at least 2 centuries. All of these things, these ideas, these concepts are carried over. The first image of Christ, the first physical image of Christ is not of a European at all. On the coin of Justinian II in the 2nd century AD, we could see a bronze Christ with woolly hair, just like he appears in Revelation. He is not a European. And we could look down the history of Egypt, of Greece and Egypt, and we could see a vast number of things carried forward from the African world into Europe. Look at the goddesses in Europe. Isis, the great African goddess, the mother of the Christ figure Horus, is carried right through Europe.